Today we're going to learn about lines.
Lines that wiggle. As I'm reading this book, you'll notice that there are many drawn lines that stand out in this book. Lines That Wiggle by Candace Whitman. Lines that wiggle, lines that bend, wavy lines from end to end. Lines that tickle, lines that sprout. Bugs have lines that stick right out. Lines to trap, lines to hide. Two lines running side by side. Lines that curve, lines that curl. Underwater lines that swirl. Lines that crisscross, lines that mend. Lines with doggies at the end. Lines that scurry. Lines in threes. Lines in leaves that grow on trees. Lines that twist. Lines that sway. Lines that swish the flies away. Zigzag lines light up the sky. Rainbow lines are way up high. Lines are everywhere you look. Find some lines not in this book.
There are 8 famous lines. Now these are just my favorite 8 lines, and you can come up with your own. But let me tell you what my 8 famous lines are. The first line is called a straight line. That's kind of like the line that we use when we walk down the hallway. It can go across, it can go up and down, it can go sideways, but it's called straight line. The next famous line is called a zigzag line. Zigzag line. It goes up and down like mountains. The third line that I like to talk about is called a bumpy, 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 bumpy line. It is kind of like hills. Bumpy, 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 bumpy. The next famous line that I love to talk about is called wavy, wavy, wavy. It looks a lot like ocean waves and lines. And then is the loopy, loopy, loopy line. This one reminds me of a roller coaster. Loopy, loopy, loopy. The next line is called a squared line. It's a lot like a castle. You draw over, up, over, down, over, up, over, down to create a squared line. Now this line is lots of fun. It's called a spiral line. You can start on the inside or the outside to make a spiral line. And the last line, it's the most craziest line that I'm sure you're really great at. It's called a scribble line. That means it's kind of crazy. So now that we've talked about the 8 famous lines, let's try practicing them in the air with our fingers. So hold your finger in the air like a pencil and let's draw straight line. Now let's draw zig, zag, zig, zag, zig, zag. and bumpy, 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 bumpy. And wavy, 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 wavy. And loopy, 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 loopy line. Now squared, over, up, over, down, over, up, over, down, over, up, over, down. And spiral, spiral. And scribble, 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 scribble. So now that we've talked about the 8 famous lines, I wonder, can you think of lines that you make up in your own head? Maybe you make a line that's called a heart line, or a circle line, or diagonal. Make anything up that you want that's a line. Today, you can use any of the studios we have opened, and your first job is to mark that studio choice on your tracker. Then, whatever you make today needs to have lines. So it's your job to talk with your neighbor, talk with me about the type of lines that you're using. You can draw the lines, you can paint the lines. Maybe you cut the lines or tape the lines. But you need to be thinking about lines when you're making your art. And if I come around today, which I'm gonna do, I'm gonna ask you about the lines you're making, and I want you to be able to tell me, yes, Mrs. Mathias, I have made what kind of lines. That's your job to show me your learning and your art.